the rankings are high stakes. They're a global phenomenon, and they really are starting to influence behavior across the world. I think we need to acknowledge that John isn't quite looking as youthful as he notoriously always does. That because he has come off a 12-hour flight very, very recently from Hong Kong. But being in Hong Kong really emphasized to me the changing dynamics of global higher education. You know, we had the presidents of Caltech, the presidents of UCLA, the director of the US National Science Foundation, as well as the presidents of the leading universities across Asia, in particular East Asia. We had the National University of Singapore, we had Hong Kong UST hosting the event, we had Peking and Tsinghua. And there was an incredible sense of optimism and excitement in the room. There was a real sense that these governments are prioritizing investment in higher education. They're putting their universities at the forefront of new knowledge creation and economic growth. And there's a tangible sense that the dynamics are shifting. I think the rankings very much speak to that context. But I really want to talk just briefly about, how we've got to where we've got to. There's been a really significant change in THE in the last decade or so, but particularly in the last few years. This is the first ever edition of Times Higher Education on the left there, the 1971. I don't know if you can see, but one of our first ever contributors was Christopher Hitchens. He had the dubious honor of being the first ever Times Higher Education staff member to be sacked. And actually he was sacked for showing a complete lack of interest in higher education. But our loss was Vanity Fair's gain. We've gone a long way since then, and not least because we only hire people who really care about higher education. One of the first things I think John and I do when we hire is we give people an acronym test. And it's a really important question, is it HEFC or HEFC? But actually the acronyms are changing so quickly, I struggle to keep up sometimes. But the key thing for us is that actually we've moved on a lot. And it's really been driven by this middle image. That was the first ever edition of the World University Rankings in 2004. It's really transformed what we do. It's made our publication transition from being national to international. It's made us move from being purely about content, about news, analysis, and discussion, into being more than that. Of course, the news, the analysis, discussion is still there, but we very heavily focused on data. And I think perhaps the most profound change has really happened in the last 18 months to 2 years. Trevor Barrett, our managing director, who's joining us in the Q&A session, has actually transformed the business primarily through investment in data. He gave me probably one of the toughest jobs I've had in the 20 years I've worked with Times Higher Education, when he said very soon after he joined us just 2 years ago, Phil, we want to recreate the rankings in-house. We've been using third parties. We've been working with Thomson Reuters. He said, let's do it ourselves. And it was an incredible challenge, but it's been incredibly successful. And that's why we see here today a growing and exciting team of data scientists and data analysts. So it's been a wonderful change. And that's allowed us really to reposition the business significantly. We basically now are way more than a old-fashioned print magazine. We're a global digital publication. We're helping universities, of course, with their strategic direction. The rankings have moved from 200 universities and 6 indicators to 800 universities on 13 indicators. And Duncan here has promised solemnly that he's going to be increasing the number of institutions in our database quite significantly this year, although we don't mention any figures in public for good reasons. We're also, of course, serving academics through our traditional jobs platforms and our content. And a really big change recently is we're now directly serving students. The rankings were produced and developed really with university leadership in mind, with strategic leadership in mind. And they were designed as a geopolitical indicator in some respects. But of course, students come to our site in the millions. I think we had about 17 million uniques to the site in the last year. So now we're actually delivering content specifically for students, guides and helpful ways for them to navigate rankings, understand rankings, put them in context, and importantly, allow individual universities to put their ranking scores in context, to add value, to have wider conversations. So how have we got here? What's been driving this dramatic change to our business? First of all, I'm sure you all know student mobility is exploding. We have about 4.5 million internationally mobile students today. The predictions are still very conservatively suggesting 8 million in the next decade or so. And research by Hobson's, a survey of around 45,000 internationally mobile students, said 1 in 3 of these students are using the THE World University Rankings to help inform their decision making. As Raghi Omar said, I'm delighted that he's, after his Iraq War experiences, he's still involved in the dangerous and controversial areas of journalism. We're talking about university rankings. Basically, we've seen a dramatic sense that rankings inform one of the most important decisions a student will ever make, a huge, huge investment. So we're informing student decision-making, but we're also informing, I think, government decision-making. Forgive me, you'll have to indulge me a bit putting my travel holiday snaps in a PowerPoint there, but I think this really emphasizes the point that all around the world we're engaging at the highest level of government. That's the President of India receiving our BRICS rankings at his home in Delhi, the Rajashrati Bhavan. We're working with senior party officials in China. Of course, John gave evidence to the House of Commons Select Committee looking at TEF and teaching. I'm not quite sure why Sir Patrick Stewart is in there, but I guess as the head of the Starship Enterprise, it reflects Times Higher's desire to go perhaps beyond the world and into the stratosphere. But look, the point is, the rankings are a geopolitical indicator. They're telling us about universities and nations' position in the knowledge economy. The other significant driver, of course, is we are supporting university strategy. The rankings were developed from within the sector. Times Higher Education is one of these rare ranking organizations that actually began from working with universities. We've changed our rankings a lot. We're evolving them. That causes frustration. But for us, it's about listening to you and being responsive to your needs. It means improving the metrics where we can, deepening the metrics where we can. And that's a big part of why we're working in the teaching excellence arena and looking to capture different aspects of university performance, recognizing there is not a single model of excellence. We can look at metrics to discover excellence against mission. But more importantly, we can break down the rankings data. We have a database of about 1,300 of the world's leading research universities. We can go deeper and deeper, get more and more institutions engaged, and find the things that matter to those institutions in terms of their individual mission. And we are serving these universities with analytical tools. Some of our customers in the last few months have included MIT, Ludwig Maximilians University, Melbourne, the #1 universities in their countries. I think we have around 50 purchases of our product as our foundation customers, and I think we've just sent an invitation to 100 institutions to join us to start shaping our analytical tools and working with us to work out what data points they require, what visualization tools and analytical tools they need to understand their performance on a world stage.